It's the month of love, and certainly February is what we talk about anytime cocoa comes to mind. And today on Beyond the Numbers, we are talking about an industry that always signifies love, and that is cocoa. And today we have a show, and that has to do with understanding the challenges that the cocoa farmers go through. And we go through the process of making this chocolate. And that, because I'm holding one, I would like to have a taste. Caleb, just you're enjoying it right now.
Yeah, cheers.
Yes, man. All right, so in as much as we're enjoying this product, we want to understand how the process comes to light, especially the farmers from their perspective, what they go through to ensure that you and I can have a finished product and enjoy in our homes. Today, Cocoa Board was speaking that indeed there are processes in place to service the debt owed them. I'll go to the farmers in Kumasi. There are challenges they've been confronting over the weeks, especially when it comes to they servicing the costs owed them by the LBCs and these various technicalities involved. We'll be speaking to a data scientist, Alfred Apia, also to understand the various issues relating to cocoa as of now. Caleb is with me here as always. Kofi is joining us shortly. But before we get into the numbers, we'd like to go straight to Bright Kweku, who is joining us right now on Zoom, to understand the whole issue. But Caleb, what do you make of today's announcement firstly?
Yes, Winston. So even though we had some delicious chocolate recently, the chocolate producers in the country are having a bit of a challenge because having access to the cocoa beans right now is a problem. And even though we have cocoa beans in the country, the price at which the Cocoa Board and the Finance Ministry set is now a bit problematic because on the world markets, and we'll get to the price very shortly, the price of cocoa on the world markets is about $4,000 right now. But then Ghana's farm gauge price is above $5,000. I think $5,400, give or take. So world market price is $5,500. Ghana is selling to, or Ghana's farm gauge price is $4,000. Sorry, the world market price is now $4,000. So it's dropping. Now the problem is that you're buying from farmers higher than how much you can sell on the international market. So many of the buyers and the off-takers are holding back now. They don't want to buy, they don't want to pay for Ghana's cocoa because they see it's overpriced. And now the farmers are the ones bearing the brunt because once the LBCs are not given access to liquidity to go and buy from the farmers, some of them are taking cocoa beans from the farmers, and then because they're not getting off-takers to take the cocoa beans from them, they cannot pay the farmers because most of these times it's a relationship the LBCs have with the farmers where they take cocoa beans from the farmers on credit. Once they sell it to the off-takers, they bring the cash and then give it back to the farmers. So once you have a disconnect between the off-takers who say Ghana's prices are a bit on the high side, also Cocoa Board doesn't have enough cash to finance it themselves, you have a problem where the farmers are not going to get the required funds they have. And I think Bryce has joined us now, and then he was on the ground, he was on some cocoa farms and spoke with some farmers, and then he can better help us understand.
So we'll go straight to Bright Kweku, Emmanuel Bright Kweku, who has been following the development in Kumasi, and he's been speaking to some farmers. So Bright, it's great to have you here on Beyond the Numbers. Now tell us, what are some of the initial assessment when you met the farmers? What were their concerns?
All right, so Caleb and Winston, thank you very much for having me on your show. In fact, the two of you were able to enjoy some chocolates, but I can tell you that my farmers, that they do not enjoy the chocolate and even the Milo that you guys are enjoying today. That's because they've not been able to receive payments for all the cocoa beans they sold to the government all the way from November up until today. In fact, when I went to Kofiasi is located somewhere in the Mampong municipality of the Shanti region, so it should take you roughly 2 hours before you get there. In fact, when I went there, we went to some of these cocoa farms, and where some of them are living, they are living in thatched houses, and most of the time you wouldn't find them regularly come out to, let's say, the cities and all. So they are always in their farms trying to put something together. So once our car got into the cocoa farm, one of them just told me he thought I was one of these purchasing clerks who had come there to give them money or pay them of a sort. But I told him, oh no, I'm just here to come and share their story to the rest of the world to really understand what they are going through. And in fact, he told me that that's Shaibu. He told me that he's not been able to cater for himself, and even his wife has left him. So he was left with him and then just the children. And also once I was down with Shaibu.
Brad, let us understand. You said his wife has left him because he couldn't afford to take off his home. Is that the case?
Definitely. He said the wife had bolted. So it's left with him alone, and then I think I met his friend also. They were just the two of them that were inside the thatched house. And so for him, if he's unable to get something, because it's the money that they use for everything, they have no source of livelihood. They have nothing else. It's just the cocoa farms that they are always there, that they are trying to grow or cultivate, that they use these proceeds for them to feed themselves and also their family. Once I was done with Shaibu, I moved on to another place where I met David Berko and his wife, and actually they were on the farm. They were plucking some of the cocoa beans. In fact, I think for the season it was a bit down, so they were trying to get the little bit of cocoa pods that were on the plant. They were trying their best. They were putting in frantic efforts to actually pluck what they could get. In fact, it wasn't plenty at the time when I got there. And what the wife told me was that they were unable to even buy food on the day, because for cocoa farmers, the usual ampesi that you'd expect is not something that is new to them. But what they need is a protein source. They want to find a meat on their food. They want to find eggs on their food. That's when they know that they are actually eating something good. So if it's fufu, they want to see fufu. At least they are buying some bush meat or even the fish off a salt. They'll be able to get it. The ingredients that's involved, they'll be able to get all of that. And in fact, that was just the wife. They told me that their son could not go to school because of the situation, because they can't leave the son to just go to school and sit in classroom, because in the end, they are not even being fed. So it's best the son
per your assessment, how many would you say are farmers within that community? And what you just mentioned that these cocoa farmers basically depend on that farming as their livelihood. How many roughly per your sample size?
Yeah. In fact, I would say that a majority of the indigents there are cocoa farmers. That's what they do for their livelihood. Apart from those who go into other forms of, let's say, farming, let's say vegetables or something else, they are basically cocoa farmers. Most of them have cocoa farms. All right. And so it's just other farm produce that they usually would add to what they do.
Okay, so let's listen to some of the cocoa farmers Bright Kwaku visited, so that at least you can see in terms of reality what happened there.
If you have the
times are hard now. We used the initial payment to settle our labors. Because I have no money, I told my son to stay home from school.
2 days school on Koi. 5 times in the school. Over. It's coming in one more. When I'm not going to school, was a one canteen. Basana. I said, the manager coming a scanning and a manaco.
I'm with Rabba, your cat, I'm with my nearby. You see, you come on the bar or the fee.
If my child is sent home for owing fees, I'll go back to the school and inform them the government owes me.
School fees, Namanaco. You see, a cat, you're going to a nearby, you're watching a pa. A German could you outside
We are suffering. We have no money. I thought you had come here to give me money. My wife has left me alone in the bush to cater for our children.
500. No, they are called or Mona.
No,
sir. We are very circular.
Ya sitting here, ya blood in every acquired the APC, and I'm not paying so crown so. In every infant.
Yesterday we ate ampesi. This morning we have no cash on us for food. The purchasing clerk told us to come for the money, but when my husband went there, he told me there isn't any now. We have been chasing the money since.
The Banakoya was it. Scanning your mind. And also today, and I saw the call, but we now call it. Or power that done is scarcely one of my better than a blind did.
In here by we, if we are more, you're the pennies and that say, you just come to cocoa.
So the situation is very serious. As you can see, the woman, look at the buildings around. The cocoa farmer situation is very dark. Cocoa is a very critical commodity for Ghana's economy. We've been depending on it to sustain our government for several years. And right now it's critical. We need to come to it. We shouldn't just believe that our cocoa, because we know gold is doing amazingly well, we let go of that very asset that has held the economy strongly. But let's go to Bright. Bright, before we let go of you, let us understand what is the next action that they say they will take considering the current situation?
Well, for them, that now that we are having the cocoa board say they are trying to distribute or disperse some amount of money, and they are hoping that their initial thought of actually selling their cocoa farms to illegal miners, because they feel that the government has turned their attention to illegal, I wouldn't say illegal mining, but gold purchases in the country. They feel that that's where they can get their money, so they would rather sell these farms to the illegal miners, so that or any miner, and then they will get their proceeds from there, and also government will get theirs. Yeah, so that's what they want, and also they consider smuggling as well. Yeah. Okay.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Brad, for bringing us up-to-date information. We'll certainly be following up on that particular story. But before we get to our data, we have Alfred, who is joining us right now. We want to go straight to the data here. As you can see, Ghana's total cocoa export is 3.8 billion. Caleb, what does this number say?
Yes, Winston. So even though last year, the farmers are complaining based on their harvest from last year was very good for Ghana in terms of our cocoa exports. So let's go to the next slide. So if you can go to the next slide, you can see that from the trend, 2025 was the highest we've seen since 2009. So since 2009, 2025 was our largest export revenue from cocoa. We got 3.8 billion. And if you do just an average, before 2025, we're doing averagely $2 billion every year. Last year, we did 3.8. And then in 2024, that's where we crashed to 1.9 million.
The next slide suggests a very interesting story. The next slide suggests a very interesting story, which is basically the average annual trend of world cocoa prices. So we've seen from $2,800 to basically, that is in 2017, it's around 3,000, to we've seen the difference between 2023 to 2025, where it began to rise rapidly. Rapidly. The farm gate price kept changing because we realized that the profitability of that sector was quite enormous. It was we meeting our constant supply target for the year 2022-2023 cocoa season, until 2025, where we began to see farm gate price going high. So and that particular change narrative there brought this new trend that we are facing this imminent challenge.
And I just want to point out that when prices skyrocketed from $2,000 to about, even reached some $12,000 per ton in a month. So when it reached that level, Ghana was the culprit, Ghana and Ivory Coast, because we're not meeting some production targets. And once we're not meeting production targets, it means there's a shortfall in the market. When there's a shortfall, price goes up, economics, supply and demand. So because Ghana and Ivory Coast were not meeting our targets, some weather conditions, illegal mining came to play, the swollen shoe disease.
Absolutely.
So many, a cocktail of
weather
factors.
Condition itself.
A cocktail of factors, actually. And this is what caused the price of cocoa in the international market to go up. Now, the question is, once you see that because of some supply factors, the price is going up. Now, do you set policy on these high prices? Because that's what Ghana did. Based on the high prices, we set policy. We did some,
new changes.
And this is where the policies come into play. But then, unfortunately, we bought into the high prices. And then after the high prices, when we reached our 12,000 per ton, production in Ghana started getting better. The weather conditions got a little bit better in some of the cocoa growing areas. The harmattan wasn't too severe, so the cocoa trees were able to grow. And then Ecuador, after benefiting from the high price, and in Ecuador, the farmers get almost 90% of the farm gate prices. In Ghana, the farmers don't get all the
We changed our formula to 80-20. So basically, the farmer gets to have 80%, while the agency gets 20%. And that, many are saying, because of the differentials, it is causing the institution to meet their own financial obligation. And that is why we are where we are now.
So the 80-20 model is basically the, you have your off-takers pre-financing you. So before that, we used to do the syndicated loan. With the syndicated loan, we used to get about almost $1.5 billion, over $1 billion every year for Cocoa Board to finance purchases through the LBCs. But then because of high interest costs and then the cocoa bills, we defaulted at a point, and then, Cocoa Board's management and the interest were going to be very high. I think at a point we were paying about $150 million on interest payments alone. And this was significant for Cocoa Board. So at a point, the government said, okay, no more syndicated loan. So we are going to stop the syndicated loan. And then we go
so in as much as we're talking about this number, let me get Alfred, who is joining us right now on Zoom. Alfred, thank you for joining us here on Beyond the Numbers. Now, we have gone through the numbers and we've seen the situation now. What do you suggest, as a data scientist, would have been the probable best way to handle this situation that will not lead to just not Cocoa Board having the challenge, or let's say the farmers receiving the benefit?
Winston, I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
All right. So I think, there's multiple factors here, right? So I think Kelly was talking about the funding model. So the funding model has changed. And so this is a test of the funding model. Last year, the funding model where the off-takers would pre-finance a certain percentage of the cocoa ahead of time was successful to an extent because the supply was tight. And then we're in a situation this year where, supply has rebounded in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And so because of that, these off-takers are less willing to pre-finance because, it's not like they're chasing after the commodity. And so that's one of the challenges that Cocoa Board is facing, right? So I think the CEO said they had like 50,000 in stockpiles, 50,000 tons that they haven't sold. And so without that, of course, then that's going to impact the liquidity that they have available. I think the other thing, of course, that you guys had talked about is the decline in world prices, right? So at the beginning of 2025, we're looking at about 11,000 on average. And now it's declining. I think we're in the 4,000s now. So, of course, that's also, it's a challenge, and coupled with the city's appreciation, right? So this is the other side of when the currency performs well, then for organizations like Cocoa Board that gets its receivables in dollars and then it has to convert to cities, that impacts its finances. So you look at all these different factors impacting the situation here. One of the things that I want to bring also into the discussion is the fact that the cocoa farmers, the cocoa farming is predominantly smallholder farmers, right? So according to for example, the last agricultural census, like 90% of farmers were cultivating just up to 10 acres, right? So it's very, very small. And so when things like this happen, right, where some of them are not getting paid, the impact is even greater, right? Because you can imagine how much cushion those types of farmers have, in terms of in terms of savings and things like that. So that's also another important point that we cannot overlook, right? And I think also one of the things I want to mention also is that cocoa, what we are seeing with cocoa now, also provides an important lesson for us in terms of commodities, right? So we've gone from 11,000 to about 4,000 or just a little over 5,000 now. So that's the same thing that should serve as an example for us, when we are talking about
Alfred, hold on a bit for us. We'll get back to you briefly. I want to make this assessment for you to give us a different narrative. We realize that currently, every time the government makes a projection in 2026, we realize they mostly depend on gold, cocoa, as one of the trademark in terms of revenue making. We've made astronomically in terms of revenue. Yep. Gold is making so much for Ghana, 20.9 billion, and with just cocoa making 3.8. The difference is why we are overly dependent on gold now in terms of reserve building, and that government has projected by 2029 they will be able to make about 20, basically.
There's some $20 billion in your reserves.
In the reserve, so that is the projection going forward. But with all this going, what is the risk? Which I'm going to ask Alfred. But before then, Caleb, what do you make of the differential, especially in terms of we getting to where we are supposed to go and the economic cost that's going to be on us as a nation?
I think, this graph makes sense because usually to get the equivalent of the value you get in gold for cocoa, you need so many bags of cocoa. But then for gold, just a little bit, you can get the same value. And it's relatively easier to get cocoa than, to get gold than cocoa, because cocoa, you have to get your trees, right weather conditions and all of that. And we've capitalized on the gold market for some time now. And then from 2024 to 2025, you can see the sharp deviation over here. And it's an outlier because we know what's happening in the international markets with Donald Trump and all of that. And again, we saw the same approach when we looked at the price of cocoa in the international market. We saw a very huge spike up. So this comes back to policymaking, because once you see spikes, you have to understand what's causing the spike. Can Ghana take advantage of this while protecting the economy when the prices eventually, come down a bit? Because the price of gold on the market right now, even though it's projected to stay above $5,000 per ounce for some time now, it came down a bit, but then projecting salaries to stay elevated over some time now.
Great.
So it's about the sustainability of the policies. If you make policies that when the tide turns, Ghana is left vulnerable, like cocoa we are seeing now, or do you make policies that in spite of the gains, we are able to capitalize and then move forward? So we can go to Alfred now.
Okay, so Alfred, now we understand that the differential, as Caleb made mention, has made it quite clear. I'm also going to ask the same question. What is the economic risks we taking this decision to basically prioritize our commodity going forward? But if it comes to the value chain, we are not seeing it reflect in terms of growth of the sector, basically. We've seen the LBCs come forth. Today, the CEO of Cocoa Board, Randy Ape, was quite vociferous, saying they are meeting with the farmers to ensure that some payments are done. The communications director of Cocoa Board also reaffirmed to Joy News that they have already started paying me some payment. But what do you make of it?
Well, I think there's regardless of what happens, government would have to step in. The central government would have to step in, because when you look at the farm gate prices, right? The CEO was even saying that we are paying very high, right? Politically, it wouldn't be good if the prices were to decline, right? And so the government would have to subsidize, essentially, to keep the prices at the level that they are currently, because. Even though we had done some forward sales, so we would have taken advantage of some of the earlier spikes in the prices. We're now looking at facing, lower prices more every day, and so that means that in order to keep the farm gate price as what we have it now, I think it's 3,625 or whatever it is now, per bag. We'll have to subsidize. So the government will have to step in, because I don't think it will look good. From a political standpoint, for cocoa prices to go down, the farm gate prices to go down at this point in time. So this is where the politics and the policy and all of that come to play, right? Essentially, it's like we were trying to make sure that already there were concerns about the government not paying enough to the cocoa farmers, and Imani had done some analysis that was showing that even with the increase in prices, about 70% of the farmers were still going to be worse off. Right, just because of how much money they need to make a living, right?
So, how serious would this situation be should the city decide to dance a different tune in terms of appreciation?
Well, if that would deteriorate the situation, right? Like I think if the city goes and appreciates even more, that would even impact this, and that would impact the amount of support that the government has to make. Now, you can also make the argument though that if the city appreciates, there might be other things like debt servicing that would be savings there. So there might be some offsetting situation here, right, where you are saving in your debt servicing, and then that money maybe can go towards supporting the cocoa industry. But definitely, the Ministry of Finance, I think, would have to do some kind of support to support the cocoa sector. It's going to be very interesting to look at Cocoa Board's finances this year, and that also brings into perspective all these other quasi-fiscal activities that they want to be doing, like getting into scholarships and getting into free fertilizer and all of that. All those costs, I don't know to what extent they'll be able to sustain those, because if you look at how things are progressing right now, and when you look at what they are getting on the international market, coupled with the city's appreciation, there are just so many different factors. And the fact that we're not even competitive, according to the CEO. So because of our prices, the LBCs would rather, or the off-takers would rather go to other countries, right? They would rather go to other places to get something for cheap. And so that's where we are now. And I think that's something that, government will have to definitely step in and try to provide some of that support.
So let me ask a very rhetorical question. Should Cocoa Board step away from being an intermediary where farmers can directly sell to the international market? Looking at how farmers in other countries personally can say they are making this profit from cocoa silage and they are actually having a better condition of living. Look at the farmer, his situation, his condition, access to roads, better condition of living, hospital. All these were things the Cocoa Board promised. And if you look at the current overhead cost of running an agency, the payment, the salaries, that is being made as a result from the farmers' own suffering or sweating on the farmlands, what they have to endure fighting against galamsey and all those challenges. Are we in a better state? Looking at how long since the Kwashi brought cocoa from Fernando Po.
That's how much time do you have?
Just a brief one. We have
my position on Cocoa Board.
Yes,
is that I think it has outlived its importance. That's my position, is that we should have gotten to a point where we would be thinking of basically transitioning away from the cocoa board model and having the farmers deal directly with the buyers and selling to whoever they want to sell to. I think that, we've created this beast that has so much overhead that essentially we're giving 30%, we are taxing, quote unquote, taxing the farmers 30%. If we're to go by the analogy of 70% of FOB, we're taxing the farmers about 30%. But I don't know to what extent the services that these farmers are getting is commensurate with how much they are paying. And so I think, to me, cocoa board, and I think of course it's going to take it's going to take a radical leader to want to get rid of cocoa board, right? But I think personally, I feel like cocoa board has outlived its importance. And that the farmers can deal directly with whichever bank that they want.
Always a pleasure having you here with us here on Beyond the Numbers. Alfred, thank you so much for joining us. Alfred Appiah is a data scientist, and he joined us today here to bring the numbers down. And certainly, we had the privilege of having Emmanuel Bright Kweku, who was on the farmlands and spoke to the farmers directly on their challenges that they've been confronting since November last year in terms of payment. Caleb, any final words?
I think I'll just leave us with this graph because, as you can see, since 2011, the government has not really reduced farm gate prices before. And then you know how the political climate is. Once one government decides to reduce the price of farm gates, it's going to be catastrophic for them, even though that could be the right thing to do. So like Alfred said, I don't think the government is going to reduce farm gate prices. The central government might have to step in and bail cocoa board out, help with some of the payments. And they're already getting some wind fronts from gold prices. So whether that could be used to help cocoa price at this time and help the farmers and all of that, I think that's something that they're looking at. But then more sustainably, we have to fix the funding model, because we tried it last year, the new model didn't work. We've tried syndicated loans. The interest rate was too much. So I think Cocoa Board, Finance Ministry, they have to sit together and then let us know the way forward with the new policy measures, and also ensure stability, especially when prices go up in outliers. We have to understand why the price went up in the first place. And then when the price went up, because we have a shortfall, the government was actually trying to fix that shortfall and then increase production. So I think we have to work on these things.
I made a projection about this, that if you look too long, you keep staring at the goat, we'll forget the ground that we're standing on, which basically produces this cocoa. And we have been too conscious of the goat story, forgetting the cocoa, which is quite important. It's a month of love. Certainly, you go to the market, you buy cocoa, enjoy it, and share with somebody. But nonetheless, remember, the farmer is also important. Let's go back to the farmer, ensure the livelihoods are settled. We're also following up on Cocoa Board. They said up to next week, these farmers should be settled. Our eyes are on the go. Farmers should also be up and doing, and certainly we'll bring more happening here on Beyond the Numbers. My name is Winston Taki, and I did today's show with
Caleb Ziblem. It was great being here, Winston.
Amazing. Next week, we are bringing you a comprehensive edition of the show, which will start from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And Wednesday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And on Friday, for 3:30 to 4:30. So it's a comprehensive buffet. Enjoy, and make sure you also join us here on the show every time here. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.